You're all very, very welcome to our I Am Here Connect series today, and it's called Building Trust and Engagement Through Compassionate Leadership. I want to thank, first of all, Margaret Considine, who is CEO of EQuita Group, for facilitating today's sessions with our client. Margaret is a leader and entrepreneur herself and has a deep passion for mental health in the workplace and has been very vocal over 30 years. So I think that's why she was particularly excited about joining us today. And Margaret works with leaders every day. And when I asked her today, look, how would I describe you? I think she just put it beautifully. And she just said, look, I teach people to try to be better leaders every day. I think that's a lovely summary there. I'd also love to welcome our panel here today, our clients. And one of the reasons why we've chosen the panel today is because both John Siskin's son, CORE, Western Post Form and TLI from different industries, but also have been early adopters of I'm Here and have given us so many insights and learnings, working in partnership to embed the belief that it's okay not to feel okay, and it's absolutely okay to ask. So many thanks for joining us today. I also want to welcome lots of clients here today. I've just had a look beforehand. We've got our friends from Western Post Form, CORE, CISC, Fulcha, Crown. We've friends from Uniphar, Liberty Steel, LGMA, Enterprise Ireland. We've got friends from Wall to Workstation, Mercury, Pernod Ricard. We've got Joanne from Mercury. We also have Sinead from PJ and Katie and Owen from Tower Mine. So lots of variety. We also have our lovely friends from the Lighthouse charity in the UK. They're also doing great work in Ireland in the construction industry. So I'm just going to start with a quick story and then I'm going to hand over. But I was doing a session about 4 or 5 months ago, and it was actually with our friends and John Siskin's son, and there was about 60 people in the room. And we were going through some content from I Am Here, and we were going through what we call our clear skills, which are the fundamental skills to show you care when somebody isn't feeling okay. And we were talking about, so it's compassion, listening, empathy, acceptance, and being real, and how we can bring that into the workplace. And we were talking about empathy and being real, and one of the senior guys stood up in front of 60 people and he said, you know, I show a huge amount of empathy to my friends and my family and even in the community, but when I come into work, and because I work in construction, I feel like I have to be a very different person. Now, he did use a very different word to that, but I won't repeat it on this call. But it was a real moment for me where I went, oh my gosh, like that is vulnerable leadership to me, where he was able to stand up and actually live the belief and the behaviours and showed his intent behind his people and to encourage them to express how they feel. And really that's what I'm Here is all about. But it is also the fact that we need leaders. The times have changed where it's all about the technical competencies and all that. Leaders are expected to be very different to 15, 20 years ago. And that takes time to evolve. And I know we'll be talking about that a little bit later. So without further ado, I am going to hand you over to Margaret, and I will see you at the end just for a quick summary and to remind you of some of the webinars that are coming up over the next 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So I am here, folks. You are all here. Thank you all for being here. In particular, thank the panelists who are the trailblazers in living the practice of this. So you didn't come here to hear me, you came here to hear them. But what I would just frame all this is to say that the world of work is radically changing. Leadership is essential, but a new form of leadership is even more essential now. So we know that leaders need farsight, foresight, insight, courage, dexterity, mastery of change, and a mastery of interdependence, because no one person can do everything. But the modern leader, these 4 panelists are going to show you, needs so much more. They're going to need vulnerability. They're going to need empathy. They're going to need compassionate leadership, because the workforce of the future is going to be very different. The challenges in the workforce are going to be very different. And therefore it calls for the leaders to be able to live a different life in order to grow their organizations. And, you know, at the end of the day, we all have a head, a heart, a body, but we have a mind, and the mind is the biggest activity that we've got. We use so little of it. Research shows between 4 and 9%. But folks, none of us would be here today. We couldn't press the button to hit mute, unmute if we didn't have our mind. So mental health and well-being go hand in hand with a well-led life and a well-led future. So without further ado, could I just do one of the core principles of I Am Here and check in with our panelists. Nicola, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Margaret. I'm delighted to be here. A little bit nervous, if I'm honest, but I'm very happy to be here telling our story in core about how we're bringing in the principles of I Am Here.
Brilliant. Well, in vulnerability, let me tell you, I do this for a living and I am nervous. And a little nerves are good because it shows your passion. Okay. And if people are attracted to vulnerability and humility, nobody's perfect, but we are perfecting.
Absolutely.
Alan, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Great
Again,
shirt.
nervous to be here, but excited to tell our story as well.
Good. I'm looking forward to hearing it. I've heard a lot of it already, and I'm really looking forward to everybody else here hearing it. Mary, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you. Again, it's a privilege to be here and to showcase the great things that we're doing in EQuita Group in conjunction with I Am Here. But as with Alan and Nicola, I'm a little bit nervous. I haven't done this before, so.
Don't worry. The time will fly. I extract teeth later. Is that okay?
Perfect,
So don't worry. Stephen, thank you for coming to us here today. How are you?
Well, I think more importantly, my team are delighted I'm here because I've just finished 5 budget reviews, which weren't easy. So I think they're celebrating the fact I'm on this conference call. I'm feeling fine, thank you.
Oh, good. Well, all of our industries have suffered. I mean, mine, the training business died entirely. Consulting business was on its knees. For most of you, the same. I think construction, Stephen, probably more than most. How has you and your team survived through COVID?
Well, it's interesting. I'll only talk about our journey since I've been with 6.5 years. And one of the things that struck me immediately coming to Ireland to live was reminded me going back to my early days in the valleys of Wales, where men were men and made of steel and never shared anything. And I remember I got to the word grand really early in Ireland. You know, how are you feeling? I'm grand. And it took me 18 months to realize the grand didn't mean grand. Grand was almost the first answer to everything.
Yeah.
And we're going through our own pandemic, and I'll just share a couple of statistics with you that why mental health is absolutely our #1 priority. Mental and physical well-being is top of the board's agenda and the family's agenda. Last year, 15 people were killed in construction on construction sites in Ireland, and 120 of our colleagues took their own lives. So it's a pandemic. In the UK, 54 were killed on construction sites and 1,200 took their own lives. So it is actually our biggest issue. And just what brings us home is that we spend over 30 million a year on saving people's lives in our company alone. But yet in 15 months, 7 of our colleagues, either in the supply chain or directly employed, have taken their own life. So we as a leadership team have decided quite rightly over the last 5 years, our #1 priority is the mental health and well-being of all our staff. And what does that mean? It means admitting vulnerability as a leader. Being humility has to be a core value of the organization. And that, you know, reducing the stigma around talking about mental health, a journey of prevention, a journey of support, and making it a safe place that people can talk about their personal issues, whatever they might be.
It's interesting because being aware, not awkward, about mental health is really important. And one of my professions is I'm a mediator, so I understand the power of listening really well. Just having someone to listen to you is really important. They're really interesting stats, and I think the people that are watching this might be very aware. You know, so if you're looking at prevention, what are you willing to invest to save a life? You know, I mean, you never get a life back. Alan, what's your interest in mental health? Why did you come to this? I know you're an advocate of this for many years with I Am Here. What's your interest?
Well, many years ago, I lost a good friend through suicide. Niall Donoghue, he hurled for Galway, and I suppose back then it made a lot of headlines due to the fact that nobody spoke about mental health, even in sport, not mind in business. but I think it made a lot of press and a lot of media that was one of the big sports stars had committed suicide, and since that, I suppose, has always been a passion of mine to try and see if we can save people's lives, and I suppose always looking out for how we can look out for our own people in our company. And I think when I Am Here arrived, we came on it, I knew straight away that it was for us, and we started implementing it straight away. And I suppose we're in year 2 of it now. It's been a huge success for us. So that's why I was so passionate about it. And I think once I told my team what it was about, they all bought into it, and it was amazing the buyback we got from our staff here on it.
Well, I mean, it's amazing because when you shine a light on something and say you've an interest in it as a leader, you know, naturally people, if they follow you, have a tendency to follow it, but it also legitimizes it and normalizes it. It becomes part of, doesn't it? Part of the everyday conversation, and opening up these taboo subjects are really important. I mean, for me, I think hiding vulnerability is exhausting. It's a bit like in that, you know, Richard, or Stephen, if we look at the other word, you know, grand, fine, I'm fine. Nobody's really fine in a pandemic. We're coping, we're surviving, we've gone from sort of fatigue to resilience to almost anti-fragile in some senses. That's if you can get through it. But if I was to look at you, Nicola, I know you've a lens on governance and leaders, and that you can govern in a way that is humanistic. Okay, what's your ambition for leadership and governance in the world of the future?
With respect to mental health, or
yes.
So I suppose mental health is something, it's so important. We have we all have mental health just as we all have physical health, but we need to mind both of those things. And I think from a governance point of view, or with my governance hat on, what I'd like to see is more mental health just becoming part of the norm. So if we are looking after people from their health and well-being side of things, that we are specifically focusing in on the mental health side of things as well, and that we're finding ways to make sure that people are doing that they're minding their staff, that the managers are looking after their staff in all ways of looking after staff, not just physical well-being or making sure that the space is safe for them to work in.
Yeah, very good. You know, it's a bit like the age-old question, how are you? Fine, grand. Yeah. And it's like a double shake hand, you know, how are you? I'm not great, and you're still gone.
Yes.
Okay, so Mary, what was your interest in TLI and coming to a focus on well-being in the workplace, mental health and well-being?
I suppose, as a company, we would like to have high-performing teams, and, to have high-performing teams, we need our employees to be happy and we need them to be well. So I suppose kind of with the pandemic, we kind of took a step back. We did a mental health survey, and the results of that, it came out that, some of our employees are struggling with mental health issues. They don't feel that they have the support. So that was when we initially started the engagement with I Am Here, because we wanted, we're not experts ourselves, and we wanted somebody to guide us and to help us, and to put the proper supports in place so that our employees, that they know that, their colleagues can support them, but also that we have professional, supports in place that can assist them. So that's kind of really, why we have, engaged with I Am Here and started the mental health and wellbeing journey. And, from that initial engagement then with I Am Here, a lot of things, we've had massive employee engagement over the past year with many different initiatives that we've run. And change isn't going to happen overnight, and it's kind of really, it's a journey, and it'll take time to get the buy-in, but it's a great journey, and it's a fantastic initiative that we are running.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I might come back to some more of the details of how you do it for those who are in the audience and how you get started. But I have a great question in from Marina Lelico, and any of you that would like to answer it. She said, how do we get our leaders to be more vulnerable in sharing their own stories with staff, to be humanist, and to, I have a saying in our house that is, you never have to leave home to be who you are. So I think in work, you should always be able to be who you are, to belong in work on your good day and on your bad day. So how do we help leaders to narrate those stories or share those stories? Alan, maybe you'd have a word, and then maybe Stephen, you might have some insight.
Yeah, I think it's about on communicating. It's having your coffee mornings or having your get-togethers and talking to people as general people, not as a difference between a leader and an employee. We're all the one at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think it's about being open and being vulnerable, sharing your story that I mightn't be feeling well today, and that's okay as well. So
Yeah.
Just because you're a leader doesn't mean that you're as strong as anybody else that's working for you. So it's important that you open up and share your story with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the things on that is really to legitimize it and non-judgment. So, we're humans, and so our mind is cognitive. We try to compartmentalize things. So the minute you start to do that, you start putting people in boxes. So if we can hold the emotions and hold the stories maybe and not judge them, wouldn't that be very useful?
Yeah.
Okay. When we finish, I might tell you the story of my 4 balls. And it's around bouncing these balls to live your life. Now, they're not those kind of balls, just real balls. And I'll explain that maybe in a moment. But Stephen, a little bit of humor never goes amiss, I presume. Stephen, how would you advise leaders to show their vulnerability?
I think it's interesting. The first thing most leaders will go to, and somebody raised it earlier, they'll go to tools and techniques and process. And they make it about, EIP, getting a well-being program in place, or measuring some stuff. I think for leaders, though, it's getting them to open up amongst their own respected colleagues and trusted colleagues. And I have to say, having been with my colleagues 6 years, it was only really COVID that these big, brave men and women who sit on a board that runs, 2,000 people or 9,000 on the sites, that actually was COVID that really brought them out and said, I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
It was that vulnerability of, I don't know what to do with my family, I don't know what to do in business. And we were having 3 board meetings a week. And it actually brought out that every one of us was struggling. And we were able to share with each other in a trusted environment that then why don't we go and share it? And just out of interest, our last roadshow, which happened to be virtual, unfortunately, the 3 COOs all spent the whole roadshow explaining about the issues they had over the last 2 years, how they dealt with the family, how they dealt with financial, how they dealt with the 5 key issues that we're surrounded by all the time. And what's come out in those discussions are that the 3 appears to be the 3 most difficult areas to really talk about in opening up amongst our staff are, first of all, there's a crisis in the family. My relationship's broken down, my marriage is broken down, partnerships are breaking up. Secondly, somebody's really ill in the family. And the third one's financial.
Yeah.
And therefore, and the fourth one is the work-life balance. And therefore, in the open conversation as a leader, if you can raise those every single day with individuals and say, in the openest way you can, and they answer negative to 2 or 3 of them, they are struggling.
Yeah.
And I think that conversation you raised in, Margaret, that it has to be part of everyday conversation. Every meeting we go to, we talk about finances and time scales and resources. Open up. And I go to site meetings now. When I go to site, the first thing I do is get the site around and say, how are you feeling? You can see in their eyes of people when they're struggling. I think, learning the easy things, which are talk about the things that really matter to them.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the quick 4-ball story now. And the idea of it is we've got a rubber ball. The rubber ball is our work life, the ball we bounce to make the juice, to make the money, to get everything done, to rise at 4 o'clock or whatever it is to grow the business. But you've got 3 crystal balls. You can put anything you like in those crystal balls. Relationships, joy, your health, whatever you want, but you've only got 3. And the key is never to let the rubber ball crack the crystal balls. And it helps you make decisions every day. So for me, leadership are everyday conversations. It's those everyday decisions, around, okay, I can do this or I can't do that. No, I must take my son to school. No, I must visit my parents in the nursing home. So last night, just by way of example, I had a massive amount of work to do. But I have a father in a nursing home and my mother can't drive because she goes around the roundabouts the wrong way. So if I want to keep her alive, I have to drive her to the nursing home. And though I had a pile of work on, I just thought of my balls. And I said, Mum is more important than this even, forgive me, do you follow me? So Mum, I need to make that hour to do that because that ball is not getting cracked. Is that okay? So they're everyday choices that we make. And Stephen, there you talked about asking a question, but not how are you? How are you feeling is an entirely different question. And in fact, even the question after it, really, you're okay? What does that mean? Because maybe you're not okay. Okay. And then if you bring yourself in and say, well, actually, do you know what? I'm finding it really difficult balancing, schoolwork, work-life balance, husband at home. I'm not used to him being there, whatever it might be. It then normalizes that I don't have to be perfect or amazing. We all put on the jacket, don't we? to come in and do a session like this, to do the work. We put on the lipstick. Caroline and I were measuring the amount of lipstick we had on before we started, you know, the battle armor to go in. You might connect more with them. You might find that they're looking after an elderly parent. They're looking after a child with mental health. They're looking after a parent or a partner with depression or financial worries or health worries or whatever it might be. God forbid they've got all of them compounding. And then who's there for them? So I would love to see that organizations of the future were there for people then, because these things, they're transitory. Do you follow? They move on if you get the right help. And this is where I am here, of course. So when you need someone, isn't it very important that there is somebody there? I am here. Okay, so if I look at the lived stories, maybe how you went about it. So Mary, how did you go about embedding the I Am Here cultural change program? Because it's not a quick fix. How did you go about embedding it in the business?
So I suppose we looked at really at employee engagement and kind of trying to embrace it that way. We started quarterly newsletters, and we would have rolled those out last year. And then I suppose in Q1 of this year, when we were very much in the height of the COVID restrictions, we did a newsletter that focused specifically on mental health. We reached out to our I Am Here ambassadors and asked them, you know, why did you become an ambassador? Why is it important to you? You know, we had that showcase then obviously within the newsletter. We've gotten our managers and our supervisors to do mental health workshops. We've also gone as far as we've rolled that out to our graduates that are coming on board in the company. So we've gotten a program tailored specifically for the graduates. We have also, we've rolled out across the business health screening clinics. Now this obviously it's quite a cost to the business, but I suppose it's a worthwhile investment because it is obviously in our employees' well-being and health. So prior to the health screening clinics, they would have filled out a questionnaire, and quite a lengthy chunk of that questionnaire would have been surrounding mental health. So obviously it's not only their physical health that was being assessed, it was obviously their mental health as well. Some employees were identified as part of that health screening where there was maybe blood pressure issues or urine, something came up in the urine analysis and they got referred to their own GP. So, issues have been identified that maybe wouldn't necessarily have been, addressed if we didn't do the health screening program. And we're very much in the middle of that now. We still have to reach a lot of our site-based guys. We've reached one cohort of them, and look, we've a lot of employees. We've just over 500 employees. So there's a lot of work really to be done on that. We've ran a children's competition for our employees, kids, their nieces or nephews, where we asked the children to design a wellbeing poster for us. And I suppose that was getting the conversations happening at home, getting kids, familiar with, mental health and well-being, and well, what exactly does it mean, to them. And it was just really interesting to see the different pictures that came in from all the children as to what they, see it as. So we took then the two winners of, because we had different age categories. So we took the winners of that, and they now have, they're the posters for our EAP support, so the Employee Assistance Programme, as well as the I Am Here, the ambassadors. So, we've done things like that for World Mental Health Day last week. We designed, the posters that I'm talking about. We got little cards done up, which was placed on all of our employees' desks before they came into work, with a little bar of chocolate, just something small, a little small token, a little gesture. And again, this was, I Am Here, like we would have kind of bi-weekly calls with them. So we're constantly kind of trying to come up with ideas of what's fun, what's kind of small, what's inexpensive, what can you do quickly. But it's constantly just, thinking and looking and, trying to react to some things are going down really, really well, and some things employees might be a little bit apprehensive of. So it's kind of trial and error as to what's working well,
Okay. Thanks, Mary. I think there's lots of food for thought in that for lots of people. There's a client that I have that does a very simple thing. They have, their logo is blue, and they have blue table talk. So there's a blue table and it's moved around the building all the time, and anybody can go and sit at it to have a talk. And nobody ever sits alone at it, is the rule. The CEO goes there and sits once a week. So in other words, in order to have the talk or to be here, you have to be present. You can't be too busy sometimes. And that's a simple way of just having that time that somebody can go up. It's a bit like the school bench where, if somebody's at it, they're never alone. So being present. Stephen, I wanted to ask you perhaps around what advice would you give to somebody here in the audience that needed to convince internal stakeholders of the relevance of this or the necessity of this?
In fact, it's aligned to another question that's come in is how do you assess mental health and well-being? One of the things I would say is in our particular industry, if you have data, it convinces people. And one of the things, certainly in our one-to-ones and our personal reviews, we're asking all the managers to ask that question. For example, why have we only got a third of our people who are tribe members or I am here? You know, why aren't all 2,000 members? However, on the ambassador side, we've got a massive response on the ambassador side. So we've got people who really want to help everybody, but we've then got 2/3 of people who don't want to help themselves. And that's the thing about how do you make it a respected, engaged area. And I think for me, measuring on the mental health surveys tells you exactly where the issues are. On the one-to-ones, we know where the issues are. And at the end of the day, if you're just a hard-nosed businessman, this makes total business, you know. Absenteeism is reduced. Presenteeism is increased, productivity is increased, you know, the motivation in the team is improved, the whole feel of the company is better. And I would say any leader that's even thinking about it, come and talk about the financial returns one gets from the input. A simple thing we did recently, EAP is now open to every family member within the family. Why wouldn't we want the husband, the partner, or the wife to ring up and say, I think my husband's struggling in work? Why wouldn't we want the children to ring up and say, look, you realize dad's come home and he's drinking too much? You know, it's not whistleblowing, it's supporting the whole family. And I think, you know, when you take those 4 or 5 key issues that causes stress amongst people, as leaders, if we can open that up, the company just feels a different place. We just interestingly, the response we had on our last mental health survey was, which really delighted me, was, do you know where support is available? 93% said yes.
Wow.
Now the fact we've still got 33 people in the organization who are very, very seriously, in my opinion, in trouble from a mental health point of view. But I would never have known that.
Mm. And historically, what we would have done was we would have parked them off to EAP or some outside resource where we said, deal with this problem. So whereas now it's not a problem, it's embracing it. You know, and we're talking here about embracing mental health, embracing the whole of well-being. Alan, could I ask you, what would you see as the qualities of a compassionate leader, a leader willing to build and able to build trust in organizations today? What would you say they need to have or do?
I think you just have to have your door always open. You have to make them aware that you're there to talk to them as well as, you know, we can talk to them. I know it has worked for us here. We've had lots of interactions and people have used helplines that have been available to them. And people have come and shared their stories with me, which is a lovely thing. Some employees are here 30 years and have never spoken to me about their simple issues. And yet, after 1 or 2 weeks of we rolling out I Am Here, I had people at my door sharing their stories with me.
Wow.
And that to me was money well spent straight away. And then the second thing was one of them turned around to me and says, going out the door, by the way, I'm here to talk to you if you ever need it. After uploading all it. So that alone is huge thing. And I think that's what it's all about. It's about reaching out, not just to the employees, as Stephen said, it's about their families as well. Because we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. They come to work, they do the day's work, and they might look fine and be happy, but when they go home, you don't know what's going on. So it's about reaching out to them and to make sure that their families are okay as well, and that they can use all the arena and all the resources that are available to them. And that's why I think it's important that the leaders or anyone that's rolling out this program are open and have their door always open to listen. And that's all they need, is just maybe sometimes just someone to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
No more than that.
Yeah. And in terms of the vulnerability, being able to express vulnerability, do you see that as a weakness or as a strength?
It can be both, I suppose. It depends on it. It's getting better, I suppose. People are still, the macho men are still out there and they're afraid to talk up. And that'll take time to change. And the more of these things that go on and the more of media presence that goes on, that it is okay to feel okay and it's not to look for help is very important. But I think it's getting better every day that people are beginning to open up, but it's still an awful long way to go.
Yeah. I have one of my clients here, Diana in Low Flow, asking, is it okay in the workplace to ask a question in relation to the family, you know, the separation of workplace and family? Can you ask someone, is everything okay at home, without breaching any guidelines, HR parameters? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I think it's okay to ask, are you okay? And it's up to them if they want to tell you the story or not. But
Yeah.
No harm in it. It's showing that you're there for them if they do need to open up or if they do need help.
And doesn't it depend maybe how you look at your workforce? You know, Stephen said earlier, you know, they're not just a resource. Like an organization is nothing, by the way. It's a bit, you know, it's nothing if it's not people, because work doesn't happen without people. Even in the Internet of Things and robotics and whatever now, you know, the art of being is still the art of leadership. I mean, these things don't happen on their own. So I recall a story when I set up the company first. I went to my dad a few years later and I said to him, I now have 5 people employed. And he said, no. You now have 5 families that you are guarding, minding. And he said, everything you do affects them. It's not just their paycheck. You are now responsible for their education, for their health, for their well-being. He said, hire carefully. So what he was saying is, it's not a collection. It's not like handbags or shoes, okay? Or divisions or departments or locations, that actually you are taking the whole family with you. And I thought it was a really good example. Nicola, maybe you would tell me your experience of your journey to I Am Here, the highs, the lows, the insights.
Sure. So we started talking to I Am Here just before the pandemic hit, and we had planned to roll it out just before that. So that probably delayed things a little bit in terms of our internal launch. However, it did come at a really, really good time, because obviously when the pandemic hit, we were all thrown into disarray, and it was just such a strange place to be in, where everyone was working from home and we couldn't connect with people in the same way. So having the team at I Am Here there and being able to lean on them and their expertise and how to connect with our staff was really, really, really important for us, and really helped us to kind of navigate some of the ups and downs. And I mean, I know everyone had ups and downs throughout the pandemic, and we all had various different issues that we're dealing with, as our team members would have as well. But again, having I Am Here there that we could lean on to ask them, well, how can we support our teams through their various challenges, was really, really powerful. And I think, just touching on some of the things that were said earlier, it can be uncomfortable to talk about mental health and to talk about these things, but the more we do it, the easier it becomes. And the more that leaders are doing it, the more the rest of the team can see that it is okay to show up as yourself. And it's okay to say, if I'm struggling a bit, I need a bit of help, and to be able to do that without judgment. And I think, again, just on our journey with I Am Here, where we've had quite a lot of engagement, particularly in recent months, it just has been really helpful to be able to lean on their expertise and bounce things off Caroline and the rest of the team. We've introduced a lot of different initiatives, similar to what Mary talked about earlier. We asked our senior leaders to share their experiences. We have an intranet that we use, and they wrote about their day, what it was like. We asked our tribe members and our ambassadors to talk about their experience with I Am Here as well. So that got really great staff engagement as well. And then I suppose most recently, we were hovering around the maybe 28-30% of our staff were tribe members up until about 2 weeks ago, where we did a bit of a push just to try and get more people involved in it. And what we did is we asked everyone to set aside 20 minutes, 25 minutes to do the tribe members course in the week leading up to World Mental Health Day. And if we managed to hit our target at the time of 35%, was the target we put in, that we'd finish up work a little bit early just to celebrate. So that it was just a little bit of a push, and we now have 42% of our team are now tribe members. So that's been brilliant. And again, the comms around that I Am Here helped us with that as well.
Well, one of the things when you're driving change, as you all know, I Am Here is a cultural change approach, is that you just need a guiding coalition at the start. So you need the leaders who will stand out in front, the buffaloes who are willing to be shot for the good idea, to try the brave and try the new. And, nobody fails in an activity like this, because FAIL is an acronym for first attempt in leadership. If you knew what to do, you would just be managing in some senses. You follow? So you're looking into the future and trying to figure out what to do. Having help from guidance in any field, whatever you're looking at, in this field from I Am Here, is obviously really useful. So it's the bravery and the courage that you need in order to be able to do that. I'm still keen to look at some of the insights that you have from your journey. So Stephen, if I was looking at practically, what are some of the things that worked for you, that worked well, that you could give advice to others on? And then Alan, because the other two have done that, I'd like to ask you to do that as well. So the journey through the stages of it.
Yeah, I think the most important thing we start is recognizing from an engineering point of view, the data told us there was a problem. And therefore, we almost had a compelling evidence to say, and not a lot of companies can't get compelling evidence, to be fair, we did. We then set out on the road of mental health first aiders. But and I'm not criticizing mental health first aiders at all. It just didn't work for us. It didn't work for us because we always have first aiders, we have nurses on our sites or doctors on our sites. So it was seen as almost a physical approach to mental health. And that might have just been the stigma of first aiders. And when we looked at I'm Here in October of 2019, it just gave us something different. And therefore it was a really almost intrusive approach to get everybody to really understand the simple basics of it's okay not to feel okay, and it's absolutely okay to ask for help. And those simple basic messages to people. And by the way, if you have problems with finances, we have solutions. You have problems with relationships, we know how to help. Work-life balance, one of the simplest things we did, everybody stops work at 3:30 on a Friday. What message does that send? The weekends are yours, right? That's the one message. Forget the fact it's 2 hours early, that's irrelevant.
Yes.
You must now work out how you're going to work with your family and your partners and everybody you love, because the weekend's now yours. We've given it back to you because this industry was great for taking it away. So that really worked. And what has worked massively is the leaders in our organization being open to say, do you know, we got this wrong, we got that wrong, and by the way, you are the people who can help us get it right. And that turning that culture around from command and direct to please help us. I think that's the most powerful message I would say to leaders really is, turn off your managing director hat and stop directing and manage information and help them and help become from your team. They will tell you what the best solutions are. And we've got loads of tools and techniques, don't get me wrong. And just out of interest, I'll share with you, we've now been selected by Microsoft worldwide to help them with 2 pilots on their data centers to roll out a complete new approach to mental health and well-being.
Wow.
So, and I would say not selling I Am Here, because that's not my job, but without I Am Here, I'm not sure we would have done that.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting. What I heard in that is 2 things that are really important. So one is the data. So that's helped to convince and the process, but actually the messaging. So and I think if everybody starts to think, what's the meta message you're sending by your actions? What are you focusing on? What's the big message out of what you're saying? So there's a message around mental health. Is that right? There's a message around change. There's a message around being there. And that message has to be enunciated, constantly enunciated and from the top. Nicola, there was one thing that when you were talking about getting your percentages up, the research around change initiative says you only need about 18% to have momentum. So big numbers are great, unless you're my age, then the big numbers aren't that great. But anyway, there's another story in that, Stephen. But the idea here is you just got to keep trying. You just got to keep moving with the numbers. Okay. So don't give up because you've got a small number is what I'm saying, because everyone counts. Imagine you're lighting up a light. You're lighting up a light.
Yeah, it takes constant effort is my experience, and you do have to lead the initiatives and you do have to keep them going to achieve success, but it can be done. And then once you kind of reach that tipping point, you bring people along with you.
So Alan, if I come to you now again and just say to you, what's your experience of the benefits of this in your business? What have you seen? Not just I Am Here, just mental health and compassionate leadership.
Yeah, I think it's getting involved with these and sitting on kind of a monthly. We do a weekly WhatsApp group. We're a smaller company than I suppose in the system and these, so it's an easier thing to. We've 15 employees, so every Friday we send out a WhatsApp group with the link for the arena and just make sure that little message on it. And then every month we do something small. Like for World Friendship Day, we got a chocolate with the logo on it. We did an 80K in May We challenged all our employees to walk 80 km. We did a leg of the cycle against suicide. We had, during lockdown, we had a girl talk about nutrition online for all the families in the evening. So it's small little things that don't cost a fortune that can make a huge difference. And where that we are passionate about it. As a leaders level, look at, but vice versa, they'll come and they'll enjoy it, and they'll say thank you for the bar of chocolate, or they'll say they enjoy the walk. And it was getting the families out. It wasn't about, you know, you going out walking 80k in May. It was getting your husband, your wife, whoever walk with you, and the feedback was huge on it. Like, so it's small things that can make a huge difference. And it's like that, you know, it's like the saying in the GEA, you know, if you give respect, you get respect, and that's as simple as that. Simple things can make a huge difference.
So I hear you saying there is lots of initiatives, but focused on them, you being involved in them, keeping them connected. That's all around engagement, which is fantastic. What I heard Stephen saying there was around initiatives and a focus on the human within it. And Nicola, you said that you had, you know, new initiatives that you're putting in place and a kind of a relentless focus on it as well. You know, that you just don't give up. You know, when something doesn't work, you know, try something else, because you know, you have a belief that there's some benefit in it. So it's a bit like your kids won't eat vegetables. You know they're good for them. So you just figure out a way to get the vegetables in them in a smoothie or whatever. You know, you sugarcoat them in something else. Not sugar, but anyway. Because you believe in the betterment of this in the future. Okay. So if I was to ask you, what are the qualities or the traits of a leader in the future? What would you like to see in a leader that is compassionate, vulnerable, humble, but yet achieving in the future? What are some of the qualities that you'd like to see demonstrated? Mary. It doesn't have to be yours, by the way, but just what leader of the future?
So I suppose really compassion. I suppose compassion and empathy can go a long way, and just, you know, having open and honest conversations. You know, and caring. You know, that caring nature towards your employee that, you know, obviously extends beyond the workplace.
Could I ask some of the others? How do you make that caring approach real? That it doesn't just look false, that it's authentic. I'm caring because we're in I am here. So this is the thing now, you know? How do you make it real? How do you live it? Own it.
I think you have to really listen to people. We mentioned it earlier, but if you're asking somebody, how are you, that you're really listening and actually giving a hoot about what they say back, for want of a better word. But I think the authentic piece is really, really important, because it's not, you can't just do it for the sake of doing it, or because, you know, that's the trendy thing to be doing. You have to really mean it. So if you want to know how somebody is, then you have to follow up, you have to listen to them and be able to come back to them later saying, do you remember we talked about that thing last week? You know, how's that going for you now? And those kind of things. I think that's one way of showing that you really care, if you properly listen to somebody.
Yeah, okay. One of the guests have asked, how do you manage or implement the right to disconnect from digital services? Any advice on that? I have some if you want to think, but there's a program called Unplug, by the way. Chris Flack and Aidan Healy run it, and it's a program that is really, I've seen it run globally for them, just basically saying that devices are taking over, and you know, you need to just disconnect every now and again. And that's a simple initiative that you could look at to answer to the question on that. Does anyone on the panel want to answer anything to that in terms of well-being? You know, this I must answer my emails at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I think it's interesting, Margaret, because enormous dilemma now is getting people back into the work environment, and there are people in our organisation who believe that working from home is a permanent solution. We are in a different place. There is no doubt that we believe, in order to share the followership and get the followership, particularly from a management point of view, understand whether people are struggling emotionally or physically, we want to see them. We want to see them in front of us. We want to see them around the water cooler. We want to see them in their teams. We want to be able to gauge whether they are absolutely in the place they say they are. From a disconnect point of view, it's interesting. I don't know when any of you saw Zuckerberg's latest strategy, which is is now going to create a universe which is fully virtual. So we will party in virtual space. we will enjoy life in virtual space, and he will create the environment that virtual is good. And I think for me as a rugby player and a Welshman, virtual doesn't work other than when I have to do it to save traveling for my staff. And I believe, understand, we had people in lockdown who didn't see anybody for 3 months. That is wrong. That's fundamentally wrong. That's
Well,
not
we're social beings, Stephen, aren't we? We are social beings, no matter how introverted some of us are. We are social beings, and we do need to connect. And despite the wonderful Adam King doing his, virtual hug cards, Lord Almighty, there's nothing like someone giving you a real hug, is there? And wrapping their arms around you, to be fair. And, I suppose, what we're talking about here is where a business opens their arms to people and says, we are here. And we're not just your employer, we do care, and we expect you to have lumps and ups and downs and roller coaster days. And for where we can help you in that, we put our hand out and say we care, we ask the question, and we listen. Nicola, you were going to come in on that there.
Yeah, I was just in relation to the question about how you can help teams to disconnect when it's appropriate for them to disconnect. I think it's about setting boundaries as an employer and giving your teams permission to follow those boundaries. So simple things like we would have a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. rule that no emails can be sent outside those hours, unless, say, you're working on a pitch or something and you need to contact your teammate, but you pre-agreed that with them. So it's just about putting those boundaries in place. We don't contact each other over the weekend about work-related things unless there's a pre-agreed reason why we've done it. But the blend of work and life, particularly in the last 18 months where we're all working from home, a lot of us are working from home, it is very hard to unpick the screens and all of that from what we're doing day to day. But I think by having boundaries in place, respecting each other's signals, if you're using Microsoft Teams, for example, and you can see that somebody's status is set to away, don't hound them over text. Yeah. So those kind of things.
And maybe even setting expectations, from a cultural perspective, picking up the phone because they haven't answered your email 15 minutes beforehand. You think, I just sent you an email, why haven't you answered me? Well, actually, I'm working on something. I'm actually physically working on something. But we do now have a tendency to schedule Zooms or Teams or whatever, 9 to 10, 10 to 11, whatever, and no breaks. I mean, I'm not sure even when people think they go to the bathroom because they're scheduled in hours at a time. Whereas before you'd have to walk from conference room 4 to conference room 7, you bumped into people, you grabbed a coffee, you dropped a report on someone's desk. We did that, whereas now we're not. So I think we need to build in some human gaps in these conversations. And in other words, really culturally, what are you expecting of people? Are we in a results-only work environment? Whether they're from home or here, where look, they are competent and capable, so let them at it. In other words, that you can delegate and let them go. The greatest, I think, compliment you can give to someone is when they say, leave that to me, and you say, I sure will, because they can. Okay, but then the question comes back to, how do you know when they need you if it's so disconnected? So, Stephen, there is a lot of research out in the last couple of months around how virtual has benefits, but it has a lot of social challenges for businesses, for growing connection to the brand, for growing engagement, for people feeling that they belong. There's some research that shows that people who joined during the pandemic could be working for anybody. I could be working for CISC or SIAC or Sally Ann or Sally Go Nowhere, because I don't feel I'm connected to it. When you live in an organization, we live in a house, we live in an organization, the building is only a thing. So I keep saying that organizations are made of people. So we have a humanist approach to how we lead, and people need connection. And from leaders, they need vision and empathy and compassion and courage. They, leaders of the future are storytellers, perhaps. They need to be able to tell the story of the business, but their own story. So why would anyone, so Alan started his story today around why he was interested in mental health, which was a personal journey. Okay. And when it's personal, people can connect to it because it's real. Do you follow? It's not an initiative. So, self-awareness you talked about, Nicola, we talked about being authentic, Authentic starts with self-awareness, understanding who you are, what grounds you, where you came from, and how anybody would be interested in that, and why anyone would listen to that. And all leaders need to understand that. I'm not connected to it at all. Just to be clear, I'm not selling it either. But to me, it is something that is a huge activator and accelerator for businesses interested in genuinely looking after the well-being, mental health, and future mindsets of the business leaders that they might be relying on to make future-based decisions in their business moving forward. And what does it cost to lose an employee, whether they just go somewhere else after all the training and knowledge you put into them, all the expertise they've got, just because they couldn't cope, because maybe nobody noticed they were overwhelmed, too much work, too much expectations, maybe promoted up to a level that they weren't capable at anymore, you know, because they didn't have the real conversation around what satisfies you in work, what makes you happy in work. Okay, so if I was to look at moving forward, we're just almost finished. And Mary, if I said to you, if I asked you for what's the one critical issue that you think business leaders need to look out for today to be able to manage their business for tomorrow, what's the one issue you think that they need to look after?
Well, I think like the key really is the employee engagement. You know, it's staying connected to your employees, because you know, if we don't have our employees, then how are we going to get the work done?
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Engagement. Alan, the same question to you, please.
I suppose being resilient. I suppose, you know, we all experience the stress, the setbacks, and the difficult emotions, and I suppose it's working together to work through them as a unit. That's the key to it.
There's lovely research now about moving past resilience into anti-fragility, which means you learn. So in other words, the trauma teaches you. One of my favorite saying is, pain doesn't leave you until it's taught you what you need to know. Yeah. But it doesn't, you don't have to do it on your own if you have something like I am here. Okay, Nicola?
I would say, just building on the 2 points that are made already, flexibility. So it's kind of linked to resilience, but being able to flex and move your business to adapt to whatever everything throws at you.
Yes, really brilliant. And Stephen, the last word to you.
Show you care. Show you care.
Yeah. So folks, I care, you care. I hope all the audience cares. If you need more information, anybody here, you can look at www.iamhere.com for upcoming events and more information. It was a pleasure to talk to and to engage with all of you here today. And just to say, to finish with a really quick 1 minute, my story, I am a woman who lost 15 children and suffered mental health as a result of it. While I might look successful on the outside, and of course I am, run a successful business, sit on multiple boards, that really took its toll on me. I then adopted 2 and had 1 child, 2 of which had mental health challenges, classified as having mental health classified. And I currently raise 3 children with mental health diagnosis. And I am a proud mother as you're ever going to meet. I have a rock of a husband, and I rise every day with purpose and passion, because I believe in the art and the heart of the human mind and the human heart. So folks, give yourself a big hug, because you deserve it. And thank you for your time today. And I'll hand over to Caroline.
Thank you so much, Margaret. I remember when I met you a couple of weeks ago, I was blown away with your story and what a wonderful person you are and how you've embraced life and your challenges. And thank you for your energy today and making the panel, I hope, feel very comfortable. You certainly looked comfortable. And thanks again to Nicola, Stephen, Mary and Alan for joining us today, for your insights. There was a few key things I heard today. We all struggle, and you know, Stephen mentioned things like financial issues, relationships. That's something we talk about all the time. It's about looking after ourselves and the whole continuum of mental health and well-being. It's about prevention, talking early. It's okay not to feel okay. Express how you're feeling, you know, and you're all working for companies who are providing a caring and supportive environment where you can do that. Leadership skills, I heard, compassion, listening, empathy, acceptance, and being real. It's not just about mental health and well-being. If we approach our team members and our business in that way, we'll have a very inclusive environment. And then also just self-check is the other thing. You know, how do we know to prevent and how do we know to get help? Just as you brush your teeth in the morning, put on your socks, eat your breakfast, do your little self-check to see how you're feeling. 4 very simple questions. How am I feeling today? Have I got time for self-care? Can I be my own observer to be able to function today? And do I actually need help? The nicest stat I heard today was from Stephen when he talked about 93% of his team know where help and support is. That's what makes it worthwhile. People ask us what our mission is. It's to increase utilization of help and support so that nobody should be out, you know, not have access to help and support across all well-being pillars. So thank you very much. I would like to just remind you that we do have 2 other webinars coming up. One is a construction webinar on the 29th called Health and Safety, the Foundations of a Mentally Fit Workforce. We have Elvin Box there, and we'll have details on the website. We also have one for men in November as part of Movember to celebrate the 21st century man, but also how their role has evolved and equally what challenges they may face and what support is out there for them. And it's for women and men. You know, we are all evolving in society together as a team. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you all for your time today. If you do want any other details, please do contact myself or www.imheretribe.com. So show you care, ask the question, call for help. And it's okay not to feel okay, and it's absolutely okay to ask for help. Thank you so much.